The next speaker is Monsignor Piotr Mazurkiewicz, and his title is Boldness in Inversion, Reflection on the Encyclical Veritatis Splendor. And Monsignor teaches political philosophy in Poland. He has worked for the European Association or Commission for Human Rights. He has a doctorate, and he has worked for the Pontifical Council for the Family.
Thank you very much for the invitation. I think it's very difficult to speak after Father Molina because all the first three presentations are more or less on the same topic. But when we are reflecting on Veritatis Splendor, it's natural that our reflection is focused on those acts which are intrinsically wrong. It means always forbidden, regardless of the circumstances. But this idea was also recognized by the pagan world. For example, when Saint Paul is writing in the letter to Romans that the pagans also, they have the knowledge of the law, it means that they are able to recognize correctly, at least to some extent, what is good and what is wrong. We have also a very good handbook on ethics of Epictetus, or a teaching of Aristotle, which was based mostly on the theory of virtue and the golden mean. It means that what is good is in the middle, in between two extremes, but at the same time, he's saying not every action or emotion, however, admits the observance of a due mean. Indeed, the very names of some directly imply evil, for instance, malice, shamelessness, envy, and of actions, adultery, theft, murder. All these and similar actions and feelings are blamed as being bad in themselves. It is not the excess or deficiency of them that we blame. That's just what a pagan philosopher could recognize without God's grace. Also, when he's reflecting on the figure of Archimedes in Euripides' play, when he felt to be morally obliged to kill his mother, Aristotle is saying this is senseless. That's totally stupid if someone is trying to justify the murder of his mother, so there is no good argument, because this is wrong in itself. When we can refer to Hippocrates and his oath, and so on, and so on. And we have also to reflect, what does it mean if this knowledge that there are acts which are intrinsically wrong would be cancelled, would be deleted from our perception of the world. Here I am proposing two quotations, the next one, two quotations of Joseph Seifert. One was formulated just after the appearance of Encyclical Veritatis Splendor, and he's saying, if therefore there are no acts that are intrinsically mala, it is permissible to murder Jews and other peoples in order to prevent even greater evils. It is permissible to kill children, rape women, and so on and so on. If in a particular situation taken together, the effects of such an act seem better than the opposite. Then in 2017, he is coming back to this idea, and saying that if we are trying to get rid with the idea of acts intrinsically wrong, so from a logical point of view, we are not just changing moral theology on this or that subject, but we are totally destroying moral theology. We can say also that we are totally destroying also the social teaching of the church, because there is no point of reference for the church also in the debate, in the political debate, if there are no stable points in the church teaching. And when we are thinking about the ancient Greeks and Romans, they had a lot of good, correct intuitions. But at the same time, Tacitus is saying, and that's, I think, a very interesting thought, that Moses, wishing to secure for the future his authority over the nation, gave them a novel form of worship opposed to all that is practiced by other men. Things sacred with us, with them, have no sanctity, while they allow what with us is forbidden. Tacitus is just saying that Moses made a total reversal of moral values concerning what is proposed by the Decalogue and the way how the Jews constructed their own society in comparison with the Egyptians or pagans at all. So we can say here's the first inversion, which was introduced into our civilization just by Moses. And the Jews, when they left Egypt, they are not just reproducing the way of thinking of the Egyptians, and they are not reproducing the political system based on slavery in Egypt, but they are reversing this kind of thinking, and they are proposing a constitution of a free state, and that's Decalogue. So then we have to see that this is a real reversal, because when we are thinking about the pagan civilization, the ancient civilization, so that's not only freedom in sexual sphere, but also the belief that slaves existed by nature, that women did not use reason, that children handicapped should be killed, or the surplus daughters should be killed, and so on and so on. There is a real difference between what was before Moses, or what was before Christianity, and what is after. And Christianity brought anthropological revolution to this ancient world, and with reference to the creation of human beings on God's image and likeness. So this is a saying about every human being. St. Paul is saying there is no longer Greek or Jew, circumcision or uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, slave, free, and so on, because we, all of us, are created on God's image and likeness, so we have the same dignity, regardless the nationality, the social state, and sex, and so on. And on this ground, we have to build also our society. And for Christians, it was clear that when they converted from paganism, they had to change their life, and to have to change dramatically their life. St. Augustine, describing the state of his soul before his conversion, used the Platonic expression regio dissimiitudinis, the land where everything is backwards. Everything, not just one or other thing. So the world seen through the eyes of an unbeliever is a world seen backwards, in which nothing is in its own place. Thus, the divinely wise and the worldly wise are fools in the estimation of each other. For the latter cannot understand the wisdom and science of God, nor the former those of the world. For the wisdom of the world is ignorance in comparison with the wisdom of God, and the wisdom of God is ignorance with respect to that of the world. That's just St. John of the Cross. We are living in totally different worlds. And let's say it should be like this. In Veritatis Splendor, we can say that this is not just an apologetic lecture aimed to convert modern pagans, but strictly theological explanation for the needs of Catholics. So, the Encyclical is explaining to us who we are and how we should live in this inverted world in relation to paganism. And the reason for this inverted hierarchy of values in relation to non-Christians is strictly religious. Cardinal Ratzinger, that's just referring to some of those the most important differences. So the first is the understanding of God, who He is. Cardinal Ratzinger is saying, yes, Greeks called their God Zeus, Father, as Christians do. But for the Greeks, the term Father addressed to Zeus was understood the way that sometimes when he is in a good mood, quite nice, but deep down he's selfish, incalculable, impenetrable, and dangerous tyrant. So the understanding of a human father was transferred on the image of God. Unfortunately, He is our Father. He is like our fathers. The meaning of the word Father in Christianity addressed to God has a totally different meaning. So Ratzinger is saying that's God's critique of human fatherhood, to call God Father. And in the Bible, Jesus is addressing to his Father, saying Abba, which encapsulates the cordiality in which a young child addresses his daddy, knowing that he is loved by him. And this is to call God Abba. That's a radical reversal also of a direction of love in relationship between God and man. Sometimes we are taught that to be a good Christians, we should love God. But St. John, in his first letter, is saying opposite. He first loved us. So to be a Christian, it means to discover that we are loved by God. And to grow in faith means to understand always better and better that we are loved. Our love toward God is only an answer. This is also a reversal in this direction of love in relationship between God and man. So, because of this foolish love of God, who decided to give his life on a cross for our salvation. So we can say that we are trying in this response to imitate the way of life of Jesus. So if we are searching an answer, how should we live? The answer is very simple. Look at Jesus and follow him. And that's an answer on many difficult moral issues. What Jesus is doing, what he was doing, can you imagine that he will teach this or that? Because everything who he is and what he taught is an expression of love toward you. Also, the commandments are manifestation of his love. Whoever fulfills them and teaches to fulfill them will be great in the kingdom of heaven. We have more surprising inversions in the gospel. For example, knocking down the rulers from thrones and lifting up of the poor, the birth of in Bethlehem crib, the washing of apostles' feet, and so on and so on. And this is expressed in the hymn, historical hymn in the letter to the Philippians, that Jesus, humbled himself, having become obedient to the point of death, and the death of the cross. So, just to finish this part, if we want to talk about paradigm shift, it was one. The paradigm shift between the ancient time and the Christian time. And paradoxically, a person who well understood this was Friedrich Nietzsche. And he called for a re-evaluation of all values. This means return inversion. He's saying we have go back to the paganism, to the time before Moses and before Socrates. So he is willing to change the paradigm, to make a paradigm shift, to get rid with everything what Christianity brought to the world. And this is a substance also of the French Revolution, Russian Revolution, sexual revolution on a little different way. To reject Jesus as a model of man and to bring about anthropological palingenesis. It means the creation of a new man in the likeness of a pagan idol. This rebellion against Christ and the hierarchy of values brought by him, which is not totally new. What is new is the fact, and Cardinal Ratzinger is stressing this, that this rebellion came into the church, that this is a rebellion also inside the church, not only outside. So Cardinal Ratzinger is calling this Ecclesia Pagana. The others are saying that there are people trying to create a new, brave church. Or to have a second Reformation. But the aim of this is this return inversion of values, saying that Christian ideal is considered unattainable, incompatible with life, abstract, and so on and so on. And in this context, we have this saying of a new paradigm of Catholicism. It's interesting that this discussion is referring strictly to social sciences. So that this is not a discussion on theology, but based on social sciences. So, for example, Cardinal Zupic is saying that we have the seismic shifts in the society, and that they are associated with the phenomenon of secularization, technological development, globalization, terrorism. So not with theological reasons, strictly social. Strictly social reasons are the arguments to change the paradigm of theology. So the encouragement is coming from the outside of the church, not from the inside. So I will not discuss the new principles of this paradigm shift, but I would just say that when we are looking on this description of the state of affairs today, it seems to me that we are in touch with idealization of the past. So the current time, for the first time in the history of humankind, is challenging for the church and for the family. So when we are, I think this is ahistorical, totally ahistorical. In the past, we were faced with difficult challenges also concerning the family. And we can say also that Christianity brought a seismic upheaval concerning the understanding of marriage and family. The first is the redefinition brought by Christianity of marriage and family. What does it mean? The divisional separation of spouses and their children from slave and equipment, because the meaning of family is totally different in Greek civilization. The introduction of monogamy, the recognition of equality of man and woman in marriage, and thus the abolition of the principle of dual morality, different for women and different for men, the obligation of marital fidelity, the abolition of divorce, the prohibition of abortion and of killing of surplus daughters. This radical change was introduced in the world by Christianity, radical change of family life, for understanding of what is the aim of the marriage and family. And on the other hand, the family faced no less challenges in the era of industrialization, which were associated with mass migration from the countryside to the cities, or in the era of the first globalization and associated migration, for example, from Europe to USA. And no less challenging we had under communism, when there was a communist model of the family, which the governments tried to impose on Christians. So, if someone is saying that we are facing the biggest in history challenges for the family and family life, in my understanding, that's absolutely not true. And so the social understanding of the context is wrong. And this reference to this social context is also changing, on the one hand, the understanding of the task of the church. When the church is just taking the example from the word, St. Paul was saying, "Nolite conformari huic seculo." Not take the pattern from the word. We would like similar to what is in the word, also trying to avoid any clashes between the current secular world and the teaching and practice of the Catholic Church. We would like to avoid any kind of hostility, but on the other hand, there is a temptation to horizontalize the church mission. It means to limit herself to administration of the faithful, just as the state administers the citizens. It's about statistics, just as it was with David when he ordered the population of Israel to be counted. So what matters then is the number of members here on the earth, not in the heaven. So we don't care for the salvation of people, but the church would like to bring relief to the people. That's all. To make their life easier here on the earth. And if there's a presupposition that if the church will be bringing this relief, so people will attend the Mass, will accept such a church. But the idea of salvation is disappearing in this understanding of the church. Concerning this theological approach, and I think what is very important here is the relationship between theology and social sciences and self-understanding of theologians. I am social scientist also, but I have an impression that there is a subconscious recognition of the superiority of social sciences over theology. So social sciences are considered as objective, infallible, in their description of the world, and passive. So infallibility is not linked with the belief, but with the description, social description of the world. And on the other hand, social sciences are not passive sciences. So when you are describing how the planets are moving, your description is not changing their way. When you are describing the social world, this description is changing the understanding of the world, the self-understanding of the people, and the behaviors of the people. So if you are saying that the world is fluid, the one who will believe that this is an objective understanding is creating his world fluid, his personal world fluid. Social scientists, as a purpose, have to change the world, not only to describe. And for this reason, we should be very careful whenever we refer to social sciences, because we can fall into the trap of self-fulfilling prophecy, so that we will believe that something has to happen, and we will do this. In this context, there was Cardinal Kupicic is proposing the family, the real family, as a special theological place. So there are various forms of the family, and we can learn from these various forms of the family what the Spirit is saying to the Church today. And the Spirit, in this context, is not teaching about sin and holiness. It's teaching about irregularity, diversity, complexity, stages of growth, and so on. But do you believe that the Holy Spirit that's a message of the Holy Spirit for us? That's the language of the Holy Spirit. And on the other hand, here also the method of theology is changed. So this is not a deductive methodology, but a two-way street. So deductive and inductive methods are acquainting teaching. So we can try to explain to people what is written in the Bible, but we have to learn from the people how they live, and that's how they live. That's a message for the church and a part of what should be proclaimed by the church. And in this paradigm shift proposed by Cardinal Zupic, we see also the abolition of hierarchy in the teaching. So, yes. So he's saying in a generally synodal church, there is no hierarchical distinction between those with knowledge and those without. In the Book of Republic by Plato, you have a description how the paradigm of education is changed in the stage of corruption of democracy. So that it is not the teacher who knows what the pupils should know, but the teacher has to listen because he is afraid of the students. And he wouldn't like authoritative and disagreeable. And the last part, the third chapter of Encyclical is titled "So as not to nullify Christ's cross." And in this verse of the first letter to the Corinthians, we have the word kenote. Kenosis we know well. So the English Bible is translating this as not to make void the cross, or of none effect, or to amplify of power, or to make pointless. So St. Paul is saying that there is a distinction between wisdom of the words, Sophia Logu, and the word of wisdom, Logos Sophias. So the church should refer to the word of wisdom. It means also that giving practical advices to the people, if the church is referring to the word of wisdom, this can contradict human wisdom. That's normal. But that's, for example, if we are teaching that people should forgive one's enemies. That's not a human wisdom. That's contradict human wisdom. But that's the word of the gospel. And at the same time, if we advise a husband to return to the wife of his youth, or to at least not to take Holy Communion if he is in a grave sin, that's against human wisdom. Or if we are encouraging someone feeling sexually attracted to same-sex person to live in total abstinence, that's against human wisdom. But to teach this is the task of the Holy Church. And what is changing the perception is the logic of cross. So we can imagine how the Romans reacted on the cross. The sign of dishonor became a sign of love. So Christians were proud of what was a reason of shame for the Romans. The Pope, John Paul II, is referring to the martyrdom as a criterion also in moral theology. He's saying, martyrdom rejects as false and illusory whatever human meaning one might claim to attribute, even the exceptional condition to an act morally evil in itself. So if we will remove cross from the teaching of the church, we have totally different moral theology than when we have Christ's cross in the center of moral theology. And then there are some practical advices to the theologians, just that moral theologians are to set forth the church's teaching and to give in the exercise of their ministry the example of loyal assent, both internal and external, to the magisterium teaching in the areas of both dogma and morality. That's a practical advice for any moral theologians. So that whenever we as theologians are proposing something, that's the criterion. If this is a real moral theology or just a game of words, just to provoke a curiosity. And there was also an advice to the bishops who, as bishops, the Pope is saying, we have the grave obligation to be personally vigilant that the sound doctrine of faith and morals is taught in our dioceses. That's the task of any bishop. And that's because the faithful have the right, that's a right of every faithful, to receive Catholic doctrine in its purity and integrity. So, if theologians or bishops are not fulfilling their task, they're breaking the rights of the faithful. Because to receive the true doctrine, that's a right of every faithful, especially because this is about his salvation and the salvation of his children. A layperson is responsible also for the salvation of his children. So this pure and integral doctrine is needed for the layperson can fulfill his own or her own task. And just to finish, there is a very good text about the faithful, which was proposed by the International Theological Commission in 2017, if I'm right, 2014, on Sensus Fidei. I just fall on this text in the debate on synodality, when it is said that for St. Thomas, a believer, even without theological competence, can and even must resist, by virtue of the sensus fidei, his or her bishop, if the latter preaches heterodoxy. That's how the Church is instructing lay people. And here's the direct reference to St. Thomas Aquinas. Just to finish maybe more optimistical way. So there is a very good chapter in the preaching of Cardinal John Henry Newman on the remnant. And he is he's referring to the light which was enlightened by Abraham on the Mount Moriah, saying, this is the light of the faith. And he's saying, this light came to us through so many generations, and it was transferred to us as exactly the same light of faith. But sometimes it was transferred only by one person. There was a time that only one person had this pure integral faith. But due to this one person, this light came from the Mount Moria to us. And this means that also we can hope that now and in the future there will be find at least one person who will be able to transfer this faith to the next generations. And maybe God is giving this task to one of us. Thank you.